Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be. Sorry, I've got a cat wandering around. It's lovely to be with you all this morning. I just want to start off with a quick notice. I know a lot of people have been contacting me regarding Nancy Langridge and her funeral. I think the news has got out that she passed away very recently. She had a lot to do with Dorset Gardens and, of course, a lot to do with Hove Methodist Church as well. So I just wanted to give people details about this. I will send out an email to everybody. The funeral service will be at North Chapel, Woodvale, on the 1st of March in a few weeks' time, starting at 11 a.m. in the morning. There's space for 30 people. So if anybody does want to come in person, you'd be welcome to. If you could just email me and let me know. The chances are we won't quite get up to 30, so don't be shy about asking if you would like to come. And it's my understanding that there's enough space for 30 people to socially distance. So do let me know. There will also be it will also be streamed, so that's the other thing to note. And I will also send out the details of that. So like you're watching now, you'll be able to watch the service yourself, so you could tune in from home. The other thing is, if anyone has any thoughts about Nancy, any memories that they would like to share, that'd be really helpful. And again, feel free to send them to me, and I'll put them all together from what I get. It's very difficult to put together eulogies at the moment, and it's a solicitor who's sorting out the details for Nancy. So any thoughts or memories that you have of her would be very, very welcomed. So please do send them to me. But I'll send out details of all of this kind of today or tomorrow. So we come to our service this morning. We're having a couple of reflections later from Beulah and from Andy. Beulah's reflection is on the Transfiguration, and so I thought we'd start this morning with an animation, a video of the Transfiguration. So I'm going to share that. It's from a different version to what we'll hear later, so we'll hear the reading a little later, but obviously the stories are quite similar. So I'm going to share that with us now as we start our worship this morning. I was muted, sorry. We sing our first hymn this morning. This is the one that I sent out the words for. They are on the screen, but they might be easier to follow with the words that I sent out. So we sing together now, Build Your Kingdom Here. Let us pray. Our God, we've seen throughout the whole of time that in small ways and in big ways, in soothing ways and scary ways, in disturbing ways, in comforting ways, you have broken into this earth, into our lives, into the lives of all those who have gone before us. Our God, in this moment, we pray that you break into our lives anew, that we may see your glory, that we may know more about you, that we may listen, that we may hear, we may learn. We pray, as perhaps we are worried about all kinds of things, that we hold on to the words that you often say, do not be afraid. And so we look to you, our God, to be our security, our safety, our encourager, the one who is with us. So pour out your Spirit upon us in this moment. May we be truly blessed. And we thank you, our God, for your presence forever with us. In the name of Jesus. Amen. So we come to our first reading this morning. I'm doing one of the readings and we have Richard doing the other one a little bit later. I'm getting better at finding people. I will try and upload all the readings at some point so we hear different voices. But I bring to you this morning 2 Kings 2 verses 1 to 12, which says this. Now when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven by a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilead. Elisha said to Elisha, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets who were in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he said, "Yes, I know. Keep silent." Elijah said to him, "Elisha, stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Jethro." But he says, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. The company of prophets who were at Jericho drew near to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today the Lord will take your master away from you?" And he answered, "Yes, I know. Be silent." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, for the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." But he said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." So the two of them went on. 50 men of the company of prophets also went and stood at some distance from them, as they both were standing by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his mantle and rolled it up and struck the water. The water was parted to the one side and to the other until the two of them crossed on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I may do for you before I am taken from you." Elisha said, "Please let me inherit a double share of your spirit." He responded, "You have asked a hard thing, yet if you see me as I am being taken from you, it will be granted you. If not, it will not." As they continued walking and talking, a chariot of fire and horses of fire separated the two of them, and Elijah ascended in a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha kept watching and crying out, "Father, Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen." But when he could no longer see him, he grasped his own clothes and tore them in 2 pieces. And so I hand over to Andy now, who will lead us in our first reflection.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you this morning. Thank you, Dan, for reading that for me. This reading for me speaks about a time of change. And it speaks of it in 2 or 3 different ways. Firstly, it speaks of leadership and example. I'm not sure that Joe Biden would have followed the example of Elisha in asking for a double dose of his predecessor's spirit. But what we certainly know is that we learn from those who have gone before us, for good or bad. We acknowledge those things about people who we've respected and very often seek to imitate those in some way in our life. And so recently, as we, as a nation, in a way, mourned the death of Captain Sir Tom Moore, there is someone for whom it would be an admirable desire for us all to have twice his spirit. a spirit of hope, a spirit of perseverance, a spirit of helping others in whatever way we can. Elijah has been a great prophet. Elisha too will be a great prophet. Secondly, just because you are following on from someone else's example or a change of leadership, it can sometimes bring changes in the direction of travel or the work that is involved. We are not all the same. We cannot guarantee that our successor will be the same as us. I remember a church where I was a member some 30 plus years ago, and when it was looking for a new minister, as the one that was there at the time was moving on, they decided that they wanted a minister exactly like the one that they'd got. And so they said, so how do we do that? And they said, well, when he arrived, he was a 40-year-old man with 2 children. And so that was their template for trying to find a minister for the church. Well, it seems to me that 40-year-old men with 2 children are vastly different from each other. And their plan was slightly foiled when, while waiting for that minister to arrive, it was found out that his wife was pregnant with their 3rd child. So that obviously blew the whole thing out of the water anyway. Sometimes we look for people who will just carry us on in the way that we have always been. When I was at college, in the last year I was there, we had a series of lectures and discussions about what it might be like to be a minister in circuit. And I just have to pick up from what Ruth said. 3rd children are brilliant, and I'm one as well, Ruth. So that is an important statement to make. I think I'd better hesitate saying that they're the best, but that's only a matter of opinion. Anyway, back to the point. At college, having these lectures on what it would be like to be a circuit minister and going through some of those things of how to fill in wedding registers and bits and pieces like that. We had a couple of lectures following on one from the other from ministers who were active in the work in circuit. And one of them came and said, quite kind of from his heart, how he felt, what it was like, his experience as a minister. And he said, whatever he said, what I've learned is that you need to go through a whole year with a new church before you think of making any changes. He said, put up with the things you don't like for the first year, and then go to the church and say, having been through it for a year, this is what I feel needs to be changed. The following week, we had another minister who, too, from the bottom of his heart, was talking about his experiences. And he said in his talk, he said, whatever you do, as soon as you see anything that needs change it straight away. Because if you go through it for the first year, people will say, well, you did it last year, so why can't we do it again? And it makes change even harder. I'm still working on which it's best to do. And it seems to me there's wisdom in both. But the fact is that we can become very used to one way of being as church. And we need to always be open to what new voices bring us. When our church leadership teams are full of the people who've been in them for 20, 30, 40 years, and there are no new voices, then we fail to find those new ways that we're being called to be church. What we know is we must take time to note the wisdom of elders, but also to get on board with the energy and enthusiasm of younger members, knowing that if they are not listened to now, they won't be here to take over or to bring leadership in the church when their elders are no longer here. We know for us as a church, as a circuit, that our churches are largely devoid of young people, of people who are under 50, let alone under 20. We need to find ways to re-engage. And certainly the way to re-engage is not to entrench us in doing the same things that we have always done, but to find new ways to speak to this generation and tomorrow's generation in the church. But we do know that some will always long for the past, and I understand that longing for the past. I understand that longing for that which has brought comfort to us. But the fact is that change is necessary with new understandings of science and society. The verses that follow that passage that Dan read, Elisha goes back and he meets that company of prophets on the other side of the river. And they say to him, well, we could go, we can send 50 of our strongest people and they can go and search for Elijah and bring him back, because surely he will still be there and he can still be with us. A longing for the past. Elisha says, no, don't go. But eventually he gives in to them and allows them to go. And they go and they search fruitlessly for 3 days and come back. And it seems to me that's very often how we are as a church. How we search for that which was good in the past, in the hope that we can find it again somehow for now. And actually, sometimes that's a fruitless task. And we must be brave and bold to step into new ways, a new future. If we hadn't, we'd be a church that was still proclaiming slavery. We'd still be racially unjust. We'd still be seeking the good of those who are rich and wealthy. It wasn't until John Wesley broke with that and started talking about the poor and teaching those who couldn't read, providing medical assistance to those who were in need, that we began to find a different way of being, a different work that we should be involved in. Our approach to slavery and racial justice. And today is Racial Justice Sunday. An important thing for us to remember over this last 10 months or so as we've been thinking about Black Lives Matter. It's been an important time for us to face up to what is right, what is proper in terms of racial justice, not just for those who are Black, but those who are in our Jewish community, in our Muslim communities, in all sorts of different walks of life, for gender inequality, for gender identity. All of these issues are really important for us. And our approach to them today is vastly different than it would have been 50, 60, 100 years ago. And that is for the good. And may we keep on being open to the Spirit guiding us in these times. For some of us, it includes a needing to think again totally about how we understand and talk about God. And with it, its implications for mission and evangelism today. But I know for others, it won't raise those questions, for they find comfort in that faith which has held them secure for many, many years. Elisha's ministry would not be the same as Elijah's, but it would be in the same vein. And Jesus's ministry moves on from both Moses, the lawgiver, and Elijah, the prophet. And we see that in this moment that we think of, named Transfiguration. He's come and he's the fulfillment of both the law and the prophets. He reveals God in a new way and opens up to us the possibility of a new relationship with him. And not only that, he then tells us that we will go on and do even greater things than he did. It's hard to imagine us as individuals doing greater things than Jesus did. But as a body of Christ, as churches filled with individuals full of Christ's Spirit, we can. We're not limited to feeding 5,000 people with a few bits of bread and some fishes. We have the opportunity to feed millions of people who are starving around the world, if only we will put them at the center of our thinking and our ministry. We have ways of changing the world that Jesus never had, if only we would put our minds and our efforts to it. But we will need to do it by being a new church, by reacting to the situations we find ourselves in the world today, using whatever tools there are at our disposal, including Zoom meetings, however much we're tired of them. And we keep having to take all the opportunities that come our way, being led by the Spirit and faithful to the Christ light that reveals to us the ways of God's kingdom. So may we as a circuit, and may we as individual churches, and may we as individuals all open ourselves up to that Spirit of God, to ask for double the measure of the Spirit that those have had before us, that we might step forward with confidence into today and into the future. And for this, we ask God's blessing. Amen. And so we sing a song that we had Russell and Louisa and Alex to record for us some time past, because it certainly is one of my favourite songs that speaks of this. It's God who sets us on a journey.
Who sets us on a journey to discover, dream and grow. Lead us as you led your people in the desert long ago. Journey inward, journey outward, stir the spirit, stretch the mind. Love for God and self and neighbor marks the way that Christ defined. Exploration brings new insights, changes, choices we must face. Give us wisdom in deciding, mindful always of your grace. Should we stumble, lose our bearings, find it hard to know what's right, we regain our true direction, focused on the Jesus light. And our longing for the old days, grant the vision that we lack.
Once we've started on this journey, there can be no turning back.
Let us travel light, discarding excess baggage from our path. past. Cherish only what's essential, choosing treasure that will last. When we set up camp and settle to avoid life's risk and pain, you disturb complacent comfort, pull the tent pegs up again. Keep us traveling in the knowledge you are always at our side. Give us courage for the journey, Christ our goal and Christ our guide.
Thank you, Andy. Oh, sorry, go on, Richard. Yes, about to hand over. You go for it.
Good morning. The reading today, I think we need to see in some context. Just before this reading, a few days before this reading, the disciples had been challenged by Jesus to say, "Who do you think I am?" And it came to their understanding and revelation at that time that Jesus was the Messiah. Now, 6 days later, this particular incident took place, which was a frightening one, but it confirmed Jesus' position within life. And it comes from Mark chapter 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them to a high mountain where they were alone. As they looked on, a change came over Jesus, and his disciples became shining white, whiter than anyone in the world could wash them. Then the three disciples saw Elijah and Moses talking with Jesus. Peter spoke up and said to Jesus, "Teacher, how good it is that we're here. We'll make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He and the others were so frightened that he did not know what to say. Then a cloud appeared and covered them with its shadow. And a voice came from the cloud. "This is my own dear son. Listen to him." They took a quick look round, but didn't see anybody else. Only Jesus was with them. As they came down from the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has risen from death." Now there's a small presentation going to be done now, and Beulah wants me to ask you to try to identify 3 things. Guess what it is, guess where it is, and how it's connected with the reading.
Transfiguration of Jesus. If we've been brought up in church, we know the story so well. It was seen to be so important that all three synoptic gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, give us what appear to be quite full accounts. Some people have said that this was probably the best day of Jesus' life so far, and yet it was the day before when Jesus would begin his journey to the worst day of his life. For the disciples, this experience was like a floodlight turned onto a dark building. You've probably seen buildings that have been floodlit. You may have seen the one at Woodhouse that we saw a year or so ago. Just now, you saw on your screens a building. I wonder if any of you guessed where it was and what it was. Well, when we go up to King's Lynn to see Richard's eldest sister, we only have to walk a few yards on a dark evening and we come across a floodlit building. It's King's Lynn's old custom house, the custom house. The lighting displays some of the old history of King's Lynn. Beautiful displays, aren't they? Like them, Jesus was floodlit. And so, Jesus takes these three disciples, Peter, James, and John, up onto a mountaintop. It could have been Mount Tabor or Mount Hermon. Nobody seems to know which. I like to think it was Mount Tabor, since the church I used to go to as a child, not far from King's Lynn, but in Downham Market, was called Mount Tabor. Since Jesus only took 3 disciples, I wonder what the other disciples were thinking, or were they too busy to bother? I wonder if they were worried that they were being left out. Here was Jesus' inner circle, Peter, James, and John. Today, of course, we'd call it a bubble. Jesus actually had this same bubble with him when he healed Jairus' daughter and in the Garden of Gethsemane. He seemed to rely on these 3 a lot. We all need our support bubbles, don't we? Our support groups, which is a bit more difficult in a time of pandemic. The word transfiguration means seen in all its glory. What was hidden is now understood. And so we read that Jesus' clothes became dazzling white. And if we'd read from Luke's gospel, we'd have seen that his face changed. Luke also tells us that he'd gone up this hill with his 3 disciples to pray. I was reading how Meg Chignell, a Quaker, thinks that Jesus' face was illuminated by prayer. When we look at people, we usually can tell if they're happy or depressed, consumed by hatred or full of concern. No doubt these 3 disciples saw a radiance in Jesus' face that hadn't been there before. We can see that these 3 disciples were overwhelmed by all that was happening around them. And Peter, the always impulsive one, blurted out without thinking, "It's good to be here. We will make 3 tents for you, Jesus, Moses, and one for Elijah." He wasn't really thinking, was he? He was just wanting to prolong this wonderful experience. But our spiritual experiences are not meant to last forever. Why did the transfiguration take place? Well, there seem to be 2 reasons, though you may think of others. The first was for Jesus. Here, he was confirmed in that he was on the right path. The presence of Moses and Elijah confirmed this. Moses represented, of course, the Old Testament law, and Elijah represented the prophet. Both Moses and Elijah had been rejected. Both had been made to suffer. And now here they're giving their approval to what Jesus is about to do. They're really here to say that Jesus is on the right track. Jesus has started to fulfill all that they have done. Jesus has come as the climax of all they have done. But more importantly, there comes the voice from heaven saying, This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. Jesus was on the mountaintop, being prepared for when he would have to face the valley and all the tragedy that he would have to encounter there. But I said there appeared to be two reasons why this transformation took place. Well, if we look at the previous chapter, as Richard has just said in Mark, we will see that Peter has just declared who the disciples are beginning to think Jesus may be. He told Jesus, "You are the Christ, the Messiah." If there was any doubt left in their minds, this transformation of Jesus helped them to see that Jesus was indeed the Christ, the Messiah. Here was God confirming Peter's confession. Here was something to help their faith, and so it would support them as they returned down that valley to face everyday life again. All the gospel writers follow the transfiguration with the account of the desperately ill boy that the disciples down in the valley just couldn't heal. This event on the mountaintop strengthened these three disciples for all that was going to happen in their everyday lives. What helps us to face up to each day? Very few of us have great spiritual experiences, but there are all sorts of things that help us. Prayer, reading our Bible, attending a service, conversation with a friend, a phone call, an email, a letter. But if we're lucky to have had a powerful spiritual experience, we still have to realize that such an experience does not last forever. Presidents are inaugurated. Joe Biden has been. He has experienced the mountaintop experience, but now he is encountering the valley, the nitty-gritty of everyday life, and what an experience that must be for him. If we've had a mountaintop experience, we, like those three disciples, have to come down to face everyday life. But hopefully it will be a new us. We will be strengthened. We will be changed. Life will never be quite the same again. Some of us have been with Andy doing Living the Questions course, and this last week we read, "Much of prayer's real power is in changing us. When we are changed, we may be able to see things in a new way, or find the strength to live faithfully with what we cannot change." Let me repeat that. Much of prayer's real power is in changing us. When we are changed, we may be able to see things in a new way, or find the strength to live faithfully with what we cannot change. A relative recently said to me that she'd had a rubbish week and she seemed terribly upset. I think she could see that all the things she'd put in her diary might not now take place. I told her that we should see each day as a new beginning. I remember telling a bereavement client years ago that today is the last day of our life so far, but it is also the first day of the rest of our lives. Thus today is the same for all of us. It's the first day of the rest of our lives, and in our Queen's words, however long or short that might be. I found an article on Michael Bublé, the songwriter, recently, but not so long ago he just couldn't write any songs, for he has 3 children, and the eldest, Noah, had liver cancer. So he and his wife put their careers on hold to look after their son. He says, you find out when you're going through these things who you really are. He says, I didn't question who I was, I just questioned everything else. Why are we here? Is this all there is? Because if it is all, there must be something bigger. The words that stand out for me from our passage on the Transfiguration are, this is my son, listen to him. We all have questions, but do we really listen when Jesus is speaking to us? We often pick and choose, don't we? We like the easy bits, like come unto me and rest. But what about love your enemies? And the metaphorical, take up your cross and follow me. And do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Are we then less keen to listen and follow Jesus' words? And so we can hear Jesus' voice when we pray, when we read our Bible, but Jesus speaks at other times through what people say, through our circumstances, when we see a need. I always remember Lynn Francis, one of our ministers at Woodingdean, saying she had heard God's voice when she was driving on the A27. I think it was the A27. But I think it might be best not to pray too much on our roads, at least not to pray with our eyes closed. Elijah found God in the still, small voice, and that is often how we find him. Though, as you may agree, it does seem to be a very insistent voice. The voice came to the disciples, listen to him. And that voice comes to us as well. Listen to him. But it's not just listening that Jesus is asking of us, but acting as well, carrying out what he is calling us to do. That's when it gets difficult. But we're good at putting it off, aren't we? We question. Maybe we haven't heard correctly. Surely he's not speaking to me. But if we are sensitive to his call, the voice is very persistent, as many of us know. There's a modern parable of the young prince. Listen to this. Once upon a time, in a land far away, there lived a young prince who was enamored with a young princess in a neighboring kingdom. He wanted to meet her, but he was afraid if she saw him up close, she would be frightened. That was because his face was badly disfigured. One day he went to the king's tailor to be fitted with a new suit of clothes, and the tailor asked him, "Why are you so sad?" The prince told him he wanted to meet a princess and win her affection, but he knew she would never find him attractive, as hideous as he was. The tailor smiled and said, "No problem, I'll make a mask for you. Then she will see you as the most handsome prince who has ever lived." And he made it. Sure enough, when the prince put on the mask, he was indeed the most handsome prince you ever could imagine. The prince then journeyed to the neighboring kingdom to meet the fair young princess. And wouldn't you know it, it was love at first sight. He was without doubt the charming young prince of her dreams. They courted day in and day out. He brought her gifts, wrote her poetry, sang her songs. Every day, not just on Valentine's Day. In return, she gave him her heart, but with one condition, that he must take off that mask. The prince thought surely her love for him would die when she saw how ugly he was. But then what else could he do? So slowly he peeled back the mask. She smiled all the more and kissed him on the cheek and said, "Oh, you're even more handsome than I imagined." Astonished, he reached for a mirror, and when he looked at the reflection of his face, he saw the image of the mask he'd been wearing. His muscles and skin had been so conformed to the shape of the mask that he'd become the very person he had so hoped to be. They were married shortly after and soon had children of their own, every bit as beautiful and handsome as they were, and they lived happily ever after. Of course, that is a fairy tale parable, but when Jesus speaks, we are asked to listen to him, and as we do, we will become more like him. As St. Paul says, we will put on Christ. Let us then listen to him and follow. Amen. And now we'll sing Mission Praise 269 if you're following it. When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way.
Thank you, Beulah and Richard, for your reading. I trust everyone could see the presentation. It to my surprise, filled my whole screen, so I didn't know whether people were seeing it or not. But I'm hearing some nods, which is helpful because I've seen some nods, should I say, which is helpful because I'm going to share another presentation in a moment as we come to our prayers of intercession. And they're written prayers that I'll pray, and there's the bits that I'll say are in white, and the bits that we all say are in yellow or gold. So I invite you to pray them along as we get to those moments. There's 4 slides, I think, and at the end of that, I'll play a piece of music where, in that time, we can kind of bring our own prayers to God, and as usual, feel very free to place those. Place your prayers in the chat box, so we can pray them together, and then at the end we'll draw all the prayers together as we pray the Lord's Prayer. And so I'm going to present now the prayers, and as I say, I'll lead us in the white type if you respond with the gold. So we pray, in the power of the Spirit and in union with Christ, let us pray to God. God of glory, it is good that we are here. In peace we make our prayer to you. In trust we confirm our faith in you. Help us to set our faces steadfastly to where you would have us go. God, look with favour. God, transfigure and heal. God of glory, look with favour on your church, proclaiming your beloved Son to the world, and listening to the promptings of the Spirit. May we be renewed in holiness, that we may reflect your glory. God, look with favour. God, transfigure and heal. God of glory, look with favour on the nations of the world, scarred by hatred, strife and war. May they be healed by the touch of your hand. God, look with favour. God, transfigure and heal. God of glory, look with favour on those in need and distress, suffering as your Son has suffered, and waiting for the salvation you promise. May the day break, and Christ, the morning star, bring them the light of his presence. God, look with favour. God, transfigure and heal. God of glory, it is good if we suffer with you, so that we shall be glorified with you. According to your promise, bring all Christ's siblings to see him with their own eyes in majesty, and to be changed into his likeness from glory to glory. To him be praise, authority, and worship, now and for all eternity. Amen. And I play now a piece of music that we may meditate, that we may pray, that we may share our concerns in the chat box. And so we pray together the words that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Grant, then we will finish with our final hymn this morning before the blessing. I wanted something lively, and I just get drawn and tempted back into the song that I think by now you know I really love. So we are going to sing end on a happy note by singing the happy song. So I'll share that now. So as God's glory was revealed in Christ, know that God's glory is also being revealed in us. So go today with the glory of God, the blessing of God, the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.